stands out compared to everything else that I'm going to talk or whatever we are doing. So my name is Ankur Bhagat. As I was introduced, I lead the supply chain function for the company, and I'm also the executive sponsor for the inclusion of LGBTQ plus, what we call as Gable, and I'll talk a little about it. For us, the mission or the vision is very simple. That anybody, irrespective of what is the background, including sexual orientation being one of the factors, should be able to come to work in an unapologetic way and bringing their authentic selves, because we strongly believe that only when we get our authentic selves without worrying about anything else, we perform at our peak, right? And that's something which all of us, fully understand, from childhood, as we heard in many stories. The way we bring this to life is what we call as a 4V framework, and I'll explain just some examples around it. It is, stands for being visible, being versed, which is understanding, what this space is all about, being vocal and being vigilant. The starting point has to be sensitization. So we globally, the company has the cable chapter since 1992. That's when in US we included, sexual orientation as one of our inclusive policies, that irrespective, we want to ensure that there is absolutely no discrimination and we get our authentic selves to work. In India, we started this, around 2018. The first step that we do is, in sensitization, it goes back, as Nisha was saying, right from the senior-most levels of the company to down to folks who are working on the plant shop floor. Just a basic understanding of what the LGBTQ plus community stands for. And then what does it mean that, what is it that, how they have kind of been working, what are some of the societal norms, what are the right do's and don'ts, and what can you do if you are an active ally, in the company to be able to support the cause of ensuring that we do not see any discrimination, whatsoever. So sensitization is the starting point, because, if there is ignorance, it's very difficult to kind of fault the person till, as some of us were talking, till it comes to a point where at the education level itself, all of us become aware, which is still some time away, and you can't kind of change history overnight. Ongoing, what we are doing is that this one-time effort we did, and now I think the beauty is that every batch of new hires who joins P&G, we have Gable at Work, which is our, Gable is the logo that we use for LGBTQ plus inclusion, included as a mandatory training. So by design, anybody and everybody who has to join P&G will go through that training. So sensitization is now built in, because that's the start of change of culture. This then needs to be supported with the right infrastructure and the right policies, because you can have the sensitization, but unless you are really safe at space, there is not much that you are kind of moving on what is on paper to bringing it to life inside the office space. And infrastructure is simple things like having gender-neutral washrooms. Again, to the point when Mr. was speaking, there are folks who could be under transition. There are folks who are not comfortable to either go to a men or women's washroom, to a cisgender washroom. So I think it is, we have now done that at all our offices, and we are doing it progressively across all our plant locations. It's also a change of culture when people come into the office and see that there is a gender-neutral washroom. It's also a big indicator, of this. But it goes beyond. For example, we have inclusion pathways. So if any of you ever comes to the P&G general office in Mumbai, as you enter the office, there is a huge rainbow crossing which says everyone is welcome here. And it's not something in the closet, it's not something which is at one end of the office. It is pretty much as you enter. It is there for every employee, it is there for every vendor, every supplier, every customer, every potential recruit, that this is what the company stands for. This allyship is visible through, we have laptop stickers, we have, lanyards, we have, including other things that we do with every activation that we can to ensure that the smell of the place as you walk into the office gives you a real sense that this is a safe space for anybody who is from the community. So that's, around what we do on infrastructure. In terms of policies, everything that is, allowed, we now have policies which are consistent, whether it is parental leave or the infertility policy, and sometimes we don't realize, right? The infertility policy as an example, something which I feel very proud of. For most of the heteronormative couples, it is definitely a one. But in many cases for same-sex couples, that is probably the only way in which you can, get to parenting if you want. So policies like these which allow us to again, ensure that folks who are coming in can focus on the work and not be, worried about what are the other infrastructure needs and so on. Doing all of this, big thing is about having the allies, inside, and that is done through multiple conversations that we have. We have conversations where we have working couples, and we have couples who are, heterosexual, but we also have same-sex couples, and we have normalized the conversation that is no different because the challenges, the demands, of what they go through is exactly the same. It is just that they happen to be same-sex. This normalizes because it is no different from the way I would say it would have been for gender 25, 30 or more years ago. When at least in a manufacturing environment, the number of women would have been lesser, and it is so gratifying to see that change, right? And that has changed the way we talk on the shop floor today. It is the same journey that we see from an LGBTQ plus, a journey for us. Last two is around having a safe space for the community. It is still a nascent space. It is still a space where everybody does not understand. So we have created equivalent of lean-in circles, what we call as our out and proud chapters. These are for the community, by the community, of the community. None of us, would kind of, as in even allies would not get to know because it is a full safe space so that they can at least lean in on each other and obviously reach out if needed to the company if there is any specific help needed. We have our representatives joining the Sydney Pride Parade. We are a sponsor of the World Pride, which happens every year as a global event that allows them to network with folks globally from the community, bring in best practices, and we continuously evolve. And the last, which is in some ways closest to my heart, is partnerships, because it is a journey, and the flywheel effect will start only when it is not only about this being internal, but we being also as external. And I can say very proudly that last year, for the first time ever, we had a partnership with IIT Madras, one of the premier institutes where we recruit from. They have an LGBTQ plus students club, called Vanam. We did an event called Vanavan. The kind of response that we got, was just amazing. And it is important because if we go back to our education days, imagine being in a closet, imagine being, not being able to be your own self. And, that's something which has stuck with us, that till we do not fix that or at least partner with institutes to get that right. And even today, most of the education institutes, a marker of a safe space or having that sensitivity amongst the faculty and the administration would be very, very limited. The more we are able to work at the grassroots level for the students, and right now this is at graduation, but all the way to schooling, and some of it could be education, this will make a fundamental shift to the way we understand, the way we are kind of, brought up, if you will. And as part of our BC Equal, which is an annual, diversity and inclusion initiative that we do, very proudly we have announced that we will be partnering with 50 plus education institutes to create safe spaces, to create markers which will allow students to bring their authentic self to the institute, and then, hence have much better professions. So all in, to summarize, and, this is what we do across the 4 way of being visible, being vocal, being vigilant, and driving, partnerships internally and externally, and of course the Times of India partnership, which we are, very proud to have this year, to further this.
Thank you so much.